Hello and welcome. We're going to continue our look at fanfares and sort of specifically trumpets, really, more than anything else. But I will touch upon some other things. Of course, this could be extended to all sorts of different things, but I'm just going to try and go through a few of these. So I'm going to start with, and obviously this refers to The Empire Strikes Back specifically. So I'm going to start with 1M3, 2M1, Luke's Escape, bar 35. And we can already see it, actually, in here. In fact. So, where are we? I just went past a good example of bubbling, by the way, just for anybody who is interested in that. So this is the bit here that I'm thinking of. So let's try and look at it just on Sibelius. It's just that little bit there. Just it's very simple. Nice how he ends up on an interesting chord at that last bit. So it's a minor chord with a flat 6, a very common chord type 420 for those of you who are pitch class set theory enthusiasts. Is there such a thing? But I think it's interesting to sort of point out exactly how they're formed. So we got the two trumpets on the top voice. Of course, if you just had three, you would just skip the top voice out. Doubling, just have to have three. They're all close position. They're all second inversion. And then they're all major chords. And then a minor chord. I suppose you could regard that as a minor chord. It doesn't really sound like that because, of course, if it's put in root position, it just becomes a major 7th chord. But it's that sort of heroic sort of rise. So a sort of short example of that. But I just thought I'd start off with something short. And then we've got a sort of... and often these are planed as well. It's very rare that they're in any sort of form of counterpoint. So I'm going to go through all of these as I see fit. So 2M3 is the next one. And I made a note here, sort of 24, 36, that sort of area. So let's have a look at that. And the reason I haven't got all of these lined up is because it's just too complicated. So I'm sort of using a menu of that. Very, very short. And in this case, it's horns as well in terms of what's happening there. Bum, ba-dum, bum. But the most important bit is this bit here, which is one of my favourite bits, actually, I think. So 2M3, let's go to that. Luke's Rescue. That should be bar 36 or so. Let's have a look. 2M3 bar 36. And we are here. That's strange. What's happening there? Maybe it was 56. Probably just wrote it down incorrectly. It is bar 33. That's strange. Ah, there we go. Oops, I just went straight past it. So it's this a rise and fall. It's wonderful. We've also got flutes an octave higher as well. So here we've got a piccolo. I think this was before I had access to the orchestrator school, so there would have been 4 flutes on this, with presumably piccolo and first flute doubling the top C, which I couldn't play just then for some reason, but there we go. And you can see it a little bit more clearly here. Yes, and in terms of what's going on, we're now in root position. And diminished chords. And so minor chords. It's actually quite difficult to play on a piano or a keyboard as well. So this one we've got sort of F Aeolian mode, so all the notes of the F Aeolian in root position. So another nice example of that, and we hear it quite often. There's a bit in Return of the Jedi where they're attacking the second Death Star, and there's a similar passage in that as well. Sort of a planing device as much as a fanfare. So, the idea of fanfare is becoming a little bit more fluid in this definition, because surprisingly there are not that many true fanfares. I suppose we've also got 2M4, the Imperial March as well. I mean, that's filled with various aspects of those sorts of things. So if we go to that, just generally going the way through. So if we just sort of, and a quick way of doing this, this is useful for my patrons, is to just go to the part, and you can sort of see various little bits of what's going on as well. So that can be quite useful. But again, they're all sort of homophonic. So this is more of sort of trombone tuba phalanx. And also notice how it changes each time. So, quite often Williams will change little aspects of things around. So that's also worth bearing in mind. So it's part of the sort of vamp of Imperial March. Like that as well. So a sort of fanfare-esque, I suppose we could say, for that. So then we're moving on to 3M2, Leia's instructions. So I'm going to get the reduction of this first of all. Yes, so it's opened up exactly in where I wanted it actually, which is this bar here. So what we've got first of all is the sort of G theme, exciting brass figure for iron cannon volley. So it's this one here. So we've got all of those sorts of sus type chords, these sorts of chordal ideas, which are all the way through Star Wars in general, but it kind of almost foreshadows that bit. That bit right at the end of the film when Luke is falling down after his hand's been cut off. Spoiler alert. So that's a sort of really good use of it, and I'm going to find the orchestral version of this. So this is 3M2, and it's bar 89. So where are we? Here we go. Let's see whether it's in there. Because I approached this slightly differently at the earlier part of it, it's not always there. I'm going to go completely wrong here, aren't I? So I think it's because Leia's instructions... Yes, that's right. So I've actually got to find it manually because the bar numbering is different. Yeah, there we go. It's going to come up soon. Yeah, and we've got also sort of rebel fanfares as well. So, classic root position as well. So this is the bit that we're getting to. So I'll just do the whole of the brass. So this is the horns leading this. This one a bit more fanfare-esque really because of the counterpoint with it. So we got 3 layers. In fact, we got 4 layers really if we think about it. So we got this trombone layer, we've got the bass line, we've got the Luke Skywalker main theme, and then this sort of accompanying figure which actually becomes sort of motivic in itself. All 4 of them in the same group. So that's an important aspect of that particular one as well. and yeah, more sort of stately and less fanfare-esque elsewhere in that particular cue. But that's sort of quite a good example. And then we're on to the snow battle. So I mean, this is vast. This whole sort of thing. I've picked up bar 134 as a point of interest. I mean, it really does go on. This took me quite a long time to do, shall we say? Sometimes I look back on things and go, oh my word, I actually did that. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's just that little bit at the end, that little sort of fanfare figure right at the very, very end, which is, you know, an interesting aside, I suppose. And then it actually continues straight on to 3M4, 4M1. So this time there's just dyads in parallel fifths. So we're going to move straight on to 3M4, 4M1. I mean, of course, I could spend hours on, you know, the ice battle. But we have looked at that in general quite a bit. I mean, is this fanfare-esque? It kind of is, really. Again, root position. Note that the horns are playing the dissonant note in the same thing. That's sort of a normal traditional thing to do, where you want that dissonant note to stand out in the same timbre. So why not put it in the same instrument? Sometimes that works extremely well, and with John Williams, that's very much a feature of the whole thing. I seem to have got 116 as a thing as well, so that's way, way, way beyond. So where are we there? Here we go. Yes. Yes, so so here we go. All of that going on. Let's just listen to it on the piano. Be hilarious. Yeah, I mean, it's madly busy. Absolutely madly busy. So we've got this sort of rebel theme fragment here going on. And it's just really interesting to see how it's all sort of put together. So we're going to look at the orchestration for that. So 3M4, 4M1. Here we go. I can never remember the... it's because I've got too many... Oh, there we go. I did remember it. I was thinking I didn't remember the shortcut for it, but I do. It's that one. A lot of this is muscle memory. I don't know what I've pressed. Here we go. There we go. It's classic Williams. Classic drama as well. So this is just the brass. A little bit yeah, so it's interesting. If you think about what's going on here, we've got a bit of a mishmash here in that bar here. So we got horns and trombones together in block chordal homophony without the trumpets. So let's just pick out those. And they're just playing standard chords in a sort of standard position. I suppose here, interestingly enough, there is a bit of a gap between the F sharp there and the lowest note here. We don't have an A present in that chord. It's not necessary to have that when you've already got it being covered elsewhere in the chord. And indeed, the violas are actually playing that A as well, although it's only the violas playing that, so I don't think there's anything else at that stage. But that's okay. That's kind of allowed. So yeah, just block chords. And of course we've got a trumpet actually reinforcing the top line of the horns, which then cuts out. And then we have the counterpoint which takes over from the horn. So if I just play the horn line and the trumpet line. It's interesting because they sort of swap roles. So this little figure da-da-da-da-dum, is then imitated by the horns. Da-da-da-da-da-da-bum, and they're all in unison until they cascade into the full chord a little bit later on. So there's a change, a melodic role to a harmonic role additionally in a lot of these things. That's sort of quite common. So for example, you can see here that it's branching out from unison here into a full chord, close position chord there. Like that. And then the traditional role of trumpets and trombones together takes over after the counterpoint. And then we'll see suddenly the bass line takes over as well. So it's interesting that sometimes there's a real confusion over what the role of the trombones is. And it's not always bass at all. In fact, it rarely is, if at all, because that's the tuba and the bass trombone. The tenor trombones, let's not forget the tenor trombones are tenor in tessitura and range and voicing. So they have a slightly different role, and in this case it's a bit more fanfare-esque. So that was a good example, I think, of that one. And then we move on to 4N2. So let's have a look at that. I might just go straight to the orchestra score on this one. This is the beauty of having done the whole film, is you can sort of now pick out little bits and pieces, which is quite useful. So, whoops. Is it that one? No, it's not even that one. Was it that one? Nope, that was create bars. Just can't remember where it is. Oh, it's go to. It's that one and a G. There we go. Let's see whether that works. There we go. So let's put a bit of context in. Yeah, so again, it's trumpets after the Imperial March. Here we go. And let's establish what inversion they're in. They're in second inversion again. So that frequently occurs. At the moment, we've had second inversions and root positions. Partly the reason for that is consideration of range as well. Let's not forget that it's going up to that note. And if it was in root position, it's going to be quite awkward in terms of it's not going to sing that well in terms of where the trumpet is playing. You know, trumpet 3 and 4 are going to be playing in A flat, which is already covered by this trombone line, which is just playing the end of the tagger, bom ba dum, like that. So it wouldn't work. So often the consideration is not so much a voicing consideration, it's actually just to do with the instrumentation consideration. And that is worth bearing in mind. So a kind of a reasonably important point at that time. What about here? Let's have a listen to this bit. Yeah, so this is sort of fanfares when they're accompanying other material. So we've got the big sort of Han and Leia tune at that point. Let's put in all the brass and we'll see how they are trumpety, digga-digga-da. You know, that sort of repeated notes are very common. Notice the same note repeated. Very, very clever rhythmically, isn't it? Because we've still got this sort of minim pulse, which is in the bass trombone, or trombone 4, and the tuba. So listen carefully here, that pulse keeps going. There we go. And then the lovely sort of if the horns can't do the trombone roll, if the horns can't do what the trombones are playing, then have the trombones doing those repeated chords. But that's a side issue really. But I love the rhythmic drive of this. Digga-digga-dum, ba-da. You know, all of these sort of dotted rhythms as well. That's a really important aspect of what's going on. Let's move on into 4M3. So this is the Asteroid Field, and this is bar 32. If we can find it. Yes. So here we go. So, of course, a lot of the time you don't really get to see the full orchestral thing going on. But yeah, it's just one of these. So it's just that. Yeah. And so it's part of the a sort of fanfare thing, which is then going to be actually part of the sort of new motif as well. And this time it's all balanced with strings, quite high strings, the sort of Brahmsian thumb, third, fifth type sort of configuration on the piano. That's something to always bear in mind. She tends to repeat actually in violins. And here we don't have a complete triad, it's just thirds. Whoops. Right, there we go. Running out of space at that point. So a sort of trumpety fanfare-esque aspect which is repeated, or doubled rather. There we go. So that's the Asteroid Field. We've got other bits here. Let's go here. Brilliant. Wonderful. Notice a minor second, which is that's his 3-3 chord, which is quite common, where we've got that sort of dissonant effect and then a semitone at the lower. Notice that the dissonance is in the trumpets, not in the trombones. Like that. It's just very carefully controlled dissonance here. Like that. There's something not quite right. It sounds like a wrong note. That's what he wants. And also notice the rhythm as well. Da 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 da. So those little quavers embedded in the tuplet are quite common as well. That's definitely a device that he uses quite frequently, I would say. So let's move on to the sort of second, or sort of going to the second third of the film. So we've got little bits and pieces. I'm actually going to skirt over Yoda a little bit. I'm sorry, Yoda, but there we go. Let's have a quick look at This Is Not a Cave. Which, again, is a brilliant little bit of writing. And we got bar 49 here at that point. So let's just take all the brass. Here we go. Not really fanfare-esque, but it kind of is homophonic. Yeah, absolutely marvellous. Let's just listen to it once more. Yeah, so just taking the trombones and tuba together, look at the voicing here. So they're all sort of in unison. Sorry, they're just in thirds, basically, with the bass note doubled with the tuba. Until there. So it's interesting, he changes the voicing on that real change of harmonic, well, in the change of chord. So it's melodic. Now harmony. So it's the harmony here that takes over. But notice that the voicing as well, we've just got the root and the seventh in that bit. at that point... sorry, I'm in transposing score, so let's move it to non-transposing score. But still, I've got root and 7th. Then I've got 5th, or sort of flat 5. 7th as well, in the trumpets. So it's not a complete sort of half dim, because there's no B flat anywhere at all. And there's nothing else to suggest that it is until you get onto this. So now let's put it in context with the strings. And you get really nice clarity by missing out the B flat. It would sound quite muddy, I think, if you did that, because there's no rare... I mean, we could put it in here. And this is the beauty of having Sibelius or Doric or whatever to muck around with this stuff. Let's put the B flat in. Oh, no, that sounds really wrong. That sounds really, really weird. Let's put a B nat... I don't really want to put a B natural in there either, because that's going to sound very, very strange and completely wrong. Let's do that again. It'd be the wrong chord. I mean, that's kind of the implication of the chord, but by putting it in, now in context of the strings, let's see what happens. No, there's something not quite right there. So I'm going to change it back, because it conflicted with the B flat at that point, which is all doubled here. So it's actually quite a low doubling, so it's a 2-octave doubling at that point. So now back to normal. Much better. Yeah. And this is where the reductions come in handy as well. So we got 6M3 here. So let's try and find the same place. So let's just go quickly to it. Where am I? Yeah. Here we go. 49. For some reason I was looking at the wrong bit. Yeah, we got quite open chords here. So we were going to tubas and trombones. So this line here, which I've played at that point, the horns are slightly thicker. So they're doubling. They're having a nice sort of meld, which I think in Kirklin is called fondue, which I think he just means sort of blended sound. Which is always quite interesting. And we've got another blend here with trumpet. So it's a real blended sound. So in other words, we've got different timbres slightly taking over each of those notes. So we'll have that, and then the E flat also melded there. So they're all sharing the odd note, and that is also quite common. You find it in Beethoven all the time, and Mozart. It's still a first inversion chord at this point. Another verse inversion chord. But now we're going into a minor chord, so it's an interesting turnaround. So notice the D is not anywhere else, which is usual, again, for a first inversion chord. In other words, the third. So it's slightly different here, where, well, actually, no, it's exactly the same. So the C is doubled there, but nowhere else. So that's usual. And then we've got this sort of G half dim with no B flat, but the reason that there's no B flat is because it sounded very wrong before, so that's why it's not there. But it's only really through kind of experimentation that you sort of know that. But it's interesting to bear in mind. So it's a good little tip. Let's omit the third if we don't need it. And it has different implications. So that's half dim. That becomes a sort of augmented 6, or a dominant 7th. So it's an interesting sort of deliberately ambiguous chord, really. I mean, kind of. So that we've got the B flat somewhere else in a completely different instrument group. But because they're already blended so well, they're melding. And then we've got the F at the top. All the same sort of procedure. It kind of works pretty well together. And we've got the same thing here. Now it's in root position. At that point. Boom. Then it goes back to a first inversion. Then to root position. And then another omit 3. So there's no E, which is interesting. Let's just do it once more. In fact, let's do it with a whole orchestra. Not quite fanfare-esque, but you see what I mean. We got a nice little dominant function at that point, where we don't need the third of the chord. It's an interesting thing. And also, you know, whilst we're on the subject, we might as well have a look at what's going on here. It's just filling in harmony notes. With the occasional little bit of something else. So a chromatic embellishment there. A chromatic embellishment there. Harmony notes. All harmony notes. All harmony notes. All harmony notes. So they're all playing the implied harmony with occasional chromatic embellishment. Going through this sort of fanfare-esque corporate progression. Love the addition of that little twinkly little glock right at the very, very end. You could have also had a little triangle as well, possibly. So another really, really good bit of music as well. So that is that. And I think what we'll do is we'll look at one more, and then I'll do another one next week where we look at the second half of the film, because that's kind of keeping almost to the same sort of sequence that we had before. So this is attack position, which is actually from part 2 of the film. Go into the next sort of section of music. Yeah, I like this sort of fanfare-esque type of ideas. So we're sort of bar 8, I guess. So sort of fanfare-esque, but and again this sort of planing idea. In this case, it's all root position, like that. So if I take it out of transposing score, minor chord, minor chord, minor chord, minor chord, minor chord. So minor chord root position planing, and minor chord root position. Like that. So another sort of fanfare-esque idea. Notice the little counterpoint with the bass line as well. There we go. which is supported with the cellos and the basses. And then we've got this sort of arco bit. Notice how here they're just sort of orchestrating the little sort of accents, but, and then probably another pizzicato there. Yes, there we go. And the same effect here with pizzicato. It's just to accentuate the attack or the transient of the note as well. So I'm actually going to leave it there for the time being, make a note of where I've got up to, and then we'll do another one, taking it up from, sort of part 2 stroke into, part 2 of the film, if it was in 3 parts. So we'll look at basically 8M2, kicking off that one. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. It's a sort of short little survey at this stage, but I just want to sort of allude to various orchestration points and things which I think are interesting. I'll also do another one on continuing this sort of string bubbling effect, probably with tremolos, that sort of thing, how they're used, because they're used a lot in Williams and orchestrally anyway, so definitely something to do for the next time. So thank you for bearing with, and I shall see you soon.